Okay, so for the first part of this tutorial, you're going to want to take the motherboard out. There's two parts that I wanted to show in this video because it's not really shown many other places. So in order to get the power connector from the power supply off the motherboard, what I do is grab a needle nose pliers and I put one hand down on the motherboard if all the screws are taken out already. I put it on there and then I just lift on one side until it comes up a bit, and I switch to the other side and it comes out just like that. Now the second part, if you have an older Xbox, a 1.0, you have the USB daughter board. In order to get it out, you just pull right up. Don't be afraid to pull up both sides, and it pops right out. Okay, now that the motherboard is out, we're going to take the power supply out. Now the power supply is quite easy. It's just two screws, one right there, as you can see, and one right underneath the bundle of wires here, right there. Okay? Okay, now that the screws are out, the way you want to take the power supply out here is by the cord, okay? You don't want to grasp onto the power supply. It might still have a charge in it held in the capacitors. So by the cord here, you can pull up. It should come right out. And then just hold on to it like this and put her down somewhere. Okay, so for the next part, it's taking out the fan. Now what you do is you use two flathead screwdrivers, okay? Or something that's flat and hard, and there's two flaps on either side. You stick this flathead screwdriver or your tool in and you push out. Okay, you do that on both sides. Then you kind of pull up and you let it becomes a little loose, and there's just these little clips on the top you take out, and then still it's in a little bit. Now you can do one side at a time. There you go. Okay, the last part is taking off the front faceplate. Now you got to do this with the biggest screwdriver you could find, or a thin stick of metal that will fit right in here in this little crack. Okay, so you stick it in and then you just pull out like this, push outwards. Get in there good until you hear those snaps. And then go over to the other side. Do it on the other side. There. Now one little tab in the middle here, right on the bottom, you just pull up on that one. Oh, it's still in a little bit. After the initial snaps, you can kind of use your hands to force it. There it comes. One was a little tricky. Set that aside. Okay, so now we're going to want to take the cage out here. Now how I do it is I just push down on the black plastic on each corner and pull up on each individual corner until it becomes loose enough that you can just pull it right out like that. Now grab your front faceplate again, because I want to show you how you take this, the power and eject buttons out. So what you do is, you see this little tab? There's a little tab right there. You push that in, so it's really well in, so it's past the PCB right there, the little PCB, and you hit the power button. Kind of push it right out, it pops right out. I'll set that aside. Now put this back in, actually. Just stick it in as you would before. There's just some tabs it fits right into there. Just kind of give it a little force. There we go. Okay, so for this next part, we're going to remove the covering here from the front, or from the top, the Xbox. So I forgot to mention this before about why we're doing all this is so that we make room for the LCD screen, plus we don't get other parts dirty when we're cutting, so it's just going to save us time later on. So in order to do this, you got these little marks here, and here, 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 there, and there. And so what you want to do is use a small flathead screwdriver, and you're just going to want to dig it into these little spaces, and then kind of pry up, and do it all the way around. And you just want to do it enough so that it clears the middle black part there. And then it should come out fairly easy. Okay, so I got the metal shielding off the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to stick them together like I normally would. Okay, so that there's no gap here between the top and the front faceplate. Okay. Now I'm ready to do the hardest part of this tutorial, which is the cutting for the LCD screen. So I measured the LCD screen, the black part, and it was a measurement of 98 centimeters length and 4 centimeters width. So this is what I'm going to be cutting into the front of the Xbox. Okay, so I put the two pieces without the metal shielding back together, and I put a couple screws in, one underneath the pad here and one here to hold it nicely together while I'm cutting. And I grabbed a, not sure what you call these, ballpoint pen or the thin tip, and I measured out with a kind of a flexible ruler with the it's got metric and imperial, and then I traced out, or I measured out, the 4 centimeter height and the 98 centimeter length. So it's just above the controller ports here, below the 3 and the 4, and just above, just on the top of the other line for the height is just a little bit above the front faceplate. So it's on the top of the Xbox. So now I'm ready to cut. So I have my Dremel tool here. It's a Mastercraft one. Don't use a cordless Dremel because they're not powerful enough. And I have a metal cutting blade here. I know you can get plastic ones too, but I don't think it's really necessary. So here we go. As soon as you start cutting into it as well, I recommend to stay cutting into it. Don't take it out and then start cutting again. Well, unless you've reached a corner. So it's in order to keep the line as straight as possible. So here we go. Make sure you have a window open, and because it's gonna get kind of stinky. Oof, gotta turn up the speed here. So the hole is made here. Now I'm just going to grab a long file and just go along, and don't work too much on one spot because you don't want to make a dip or a bump in the line of the cutout. So just keep working your way around with the file until you got it the way you like. Then we'll use some finer sandpaper. You might find getting the two parts apart or hard afterwards because maybe some plastic has melted together. I just used a little flathead screwdriver to get it apart. This little bar is still there, so we want to get rid of that actually. So we want to keep it in a straight line again. Turn up the speed a little bit. There we are. Okay, now start working with the file again. Okay, now the next place where you're going to have to cut is right behind the part that was cut on the top of the Xbox. It's these little things here. We're going to have to cut them right out. So we can do that again with the Dremel. Try not to go through these posts here. There we go. Good. Okay, so there's another spot that we got to take out. It's right here. Okay, so we want to take this right out. Kind of like at a diagonal here, like that, okay, and then straight across here, okay, because we need the room. So let's do that here. Okay, and continue filing again. We're going to get using some different sandpaper pretty soon to make it a little nicer there, but it's starting to come along. This part is a little difficult, so it takes a little while. Keep going. Okay, now I'm starting with my 180 grit sandpaper. That's how I'm going to start. And this is where it starts to really smooth out, so just work your way along the edges. Don't sand too much. You can test fit it if you want now as well. It's not going to be so super perfect, like there's going to be tiny gaps, but it won't be very noticeable at all. Okay, so this is a test fit here. So it's pretty good. This is just after the 180 grit sandpaper. So it's pretty good. We got a bit of a gap going here, but not If you want it perfect, I'd say use some auto body filler and then paint it afterwards. Auto body filler to fill in the cracks, and then sand it down. Now we're going to move on to 400 grit. Yep. Alright, so the last part I used 800 grit sandpaper, and I went through it once again. So it's pretty smooth. You can't really tell, like it's a little, there's a lot of dust from the sanding, but it's quite smooth now. Big difference from when we first started with the Dremel. So now we're going to move on to the bottom of the metal shielding. So the first thing we want to do is on this side, the front right side, we're going to pop these two spots here right off because we don't need them. So just take a flathead screwdriver Okay, so I split these two apart. I used a bigger screwdriver head. I just stuck it in and then kind of twisted and let go pretty easily. So just the first two are let go, the third one is still intact. Now we're going to cut into the metal shielding. And you can use a Dremel, jigsaw, or I'm going to try these tin snips. Not sure if you got a pair, probably not. But yeah, you can use those others too. So where I want to cut is right past, this is where the power cable, the yellow cable from the front faceplate comes through. Just two little areas past that to the left. This little one right here. I want to cut right down right there. So I'm just going to finish the rest with the Dremel here. I have a metal cutoff blade, so okay, so I just bent it back here. It was like this. I just bent it back a little bit, and I just want to cut right here. I want to cut this front part off. So there we go. Okay, so I got the metal shielding back on here, the bottom metal shielding, and the controller port in, but I want to show you something that needs to be a little more modification. I was pretty sure that we were going to have to do this, but didn't know absolutely for sure. So with this in, the controller port has to be shaven a little bit here. I'll show you exactly how much needs to be shaven, just kind of a line right there. Not right through the part where the screw goes in, but close to it. And then right here, the LCD needs to take this space right here, or else it pops out. It won't be even. It won't be flush here in the front. So we're going to have to move that part of the power eject cable, the white part you see there. We're going to have to move it over to the other side. So that's the next part. Okay, so now we're just going to shave that bit off the controller port. So we're just going to make a line like this. Now on, just like that right there. Now onto the power eject. Okay, so now before we take the wires out of their spots here, you might want to mark the wires so that when we put it onto the other side, it's easier. You can see there's a little 1 right here, so you could mark that as wire 1, and the end is wire 9. So we're going to move those right to the other side. So yeah. Okay, so the next part is to desolder these solder points, because we want to get that connector on the other side off. So grab your soldering iron, just going to tin the tip. Already applied some liquid flux down. Flux helps. Grab your desoldering braid. Soldering iron is kind of on the fritz here. Comes apart really easily. Okay, and just continue like that until you got all the pins desoldered, and then get the connector out. Okay, so I just got the connector out. It was kind of a pain. I had to use needle nose pliers after making sure that all the solder was out. It was still quite stiff in there, so I got it out. Just really try to make sure that you got as much solder off as possible, because you do not want to be damaging a pad or anything. You can also kind of try to push down on top of the pins with your iron. That can help sometimes. You could also use a chip quick desoldering solder. That helps too. I didn't use it this time, but anyways, after the connector's out, grab some isopropyl alcohol. I just got 70% here with cotton swab. Just clean up the work area here before you start soldering to this side of the board. Okay, ready to go. First solder joint here on the other side of the board. So what's going to be tricky here is that I need to solder to this side, because the other side has no solder point, no solder pad to solder to. So yeah, I'm going to have to make the solder joint on the same side as the wire. So probably a little bit of the wire is going to get melted. I also want to do it on this side because it makes the most room for the LCD screen. So heat the wire and the pad. Add a little bit of flux. first solder joint. So just keep going all along. I'm using just another power eject board in order to tell which wire to put where, which you can do as well. Or if you have them all marked, that works well as well. Okay, so I just wanted to show you a technique. I'm almost done this here. For not burning the wire is like you can have the wire slightly in the hole when you begin. And then as soon as you got the solder in there a little bit, remelt the solder and push the wire in with your other hand. So then you have the wire real close to the end, non-burnt, and a good connection. Okay, so we're going to put our PCB that we just modified back into its spot. So how we do that is there's two clips right here. We put that in first, the two clips. Okay. Then we just push down on the top part of the PCB until you hear the click. That's that tab here clicking back into place over top of the PCB. So there we go. Now we're going to put the motherboard back in and we're going to test this to make sure that it's working correctly. Yeah. Okay, so I got the PCB or the front faceplate back in, the motherboard in, the power supply. I just put one screw in the power supply so that when I plug it in it's not going to be moving around. To put the fan back in is quite easy. Just line these two hooks, go right into their spots that they were in before. Actually, don't bother with that first. Just line it up so that the tabs on either side are on either side of the fan and just push down. And then you could put those hooks in their place and then push down again. There you go. And then just plug her in. Okay, so to test it now, I've hooked up the optical drive with the IDE cable and the power cable. Because I just want to test, all I need is the power cable plugged in. I don't need the video cable yet. So let's just test her out. So we hit power. We got power. It's going to, of course, give you an error light. It's green, yellow. So if you hit the eject, test the eject, it works. It's just kind of a sticky drive. So we got power, we got eject, everything's good. Move on. Okay, something I forgot to mention was on the other side of the PCB, it's going to be coming really close to the PCB of the LCD. So instead of, well, to make sure that there's no short, you can clean up the wires, just cut them with some wire cutters here. They're cheap, you can get them lots of places, and then just put a little piece of electrical tape over top of those wires there. Okay, now grab your kit, the LCD, and test fit here. We should have ample room. Now you see that there's a way larger space there that we can use between the PCB and the front faceplate. So the LCD should just slide in nicely. There we go. And nice and flush in the front. The LCD screen is right up against the power eject PCB, but that's okay. We got the electrical tape in the way there, so there'll be no short. Nice and flush, just how we want it. So now we're gonna take the motherboard out again. I know it's a lot of work, but we're gonna fit the parts of the kit now. So yep. Okay, so the next part, you want to have your LCD screen in place, and we're going to place the SPI to 2-power adapter, this little thing here. So it's a little bit of electrical tape on the back. Just put something sticky, okay? Whatever it is, I'm going to use hot glue. You can use what you want. Just going to put a little bit on the back. Now where I want to place it is right underneath the controller port. So all the way underneath. Just hold it there for a sec until it starts to dry. Watch for the power supply. You could actually have the power supply out right now, you don't need it in, but I like to have the controller port in so that I know how far down I need to put that adapter. So, yep. Then for the rest of the cable, you want it out of the way of the motherboard, so just keep laying it along the bottom here, the bottom of the shielding, and around that black post, okay, until you get to where it needs to be. So, yeah. Okay, so I found out that my wire is a little short. That's okay. You can just go over top of the motherboard right there, and here's the pin header already soldered in. There's lots of tutorials on how to install a pin header. So since we were installing the mod chip, you should know how to do this if you bought the kit. So once the pin header is in, you the mod chip down. Now we need to connect the DO point. I always use the bottom motherboard DO point. A lot of people prefer the top, but I don't know, I find it never comes loose with the top point. So just solder it in. There we go. Okay, so our LCD screen is pretty much ready to go. The only other thing that we need is to hook up the 5-volt supply of power. So that's that wire that has the 2 connections and then the heat shrink put on it. So where we're going to get it is right from the controller port. We're going to get our 5-volt supply from the controller port. Okay, so before hooking up the 5-volt supply for the LCD, we're going to get the mod chip ready. So I included the 2 discs, the X2 BIOS disc and this Layers 2.7 disc. So we're going to start off using the BIOS disc. I'm going to flash the mod chip. So turn the Xbox on. Now hit the white button for menu when it shows here. There you go, white button. Okay, now put in the disc. Okay, now we're going to go to configuration. BIOS bank configuration. And then bank modes. Now we're going to do, this is a selection. You can have a BIOS of 1 megabyte, 2 BIOSes of 512, 2 of 256 and 1 of 512, or 4 of 256K. We're going to go for the 4 256K. So hit A on that. Okay. Now flash BIOS. And go use D BIOS.bin. Hit A on that. It says OK, file loaded from CD. Good. Now we hit B. And select bank to flash. Hit A on that. Select whichever one you want. I recommend bank 1. It's kind of the default. So it says on the bottom, selected bank, bank 1, 256. And it's loaded, so now we go program flash, A. And it flashes, there's a red, the power eject button will turn red, flashing red, as it's flashing. And then it said flashing done on the screen. So we got that done now. Now, like there's still the stock default dash, the Microsoft dash on this Xbox. So it'll still boot to dash, the only difference being that it'll play burnt discs now. So let's go all the way back to the main menu and go bank 1 and hit A on bank 1. You can take out the disk now. BIOS disk. And you see it says Executor there, Executor 2 on the bottom instead of Microsoft now. Now we want this layers disk. So throw that disk in. Okay, here we go to the Slayer screen. So what we want to do now is go to Change Startup Dashboard. And we're going to go to Install EvoX as Primary Dash Upgraded HDD. The reason we're going to do it this way is so that we can actually still boot the original BIOS. We can do it where you can't you can't boot the original BIOS, but it's kind of something cool just to keep intact. So we'll hit A on that one and use with upgraded HD only, and then yes, press A, and it does it for us. Okay, and after this, we're going to have the EvoX dash boot up. So just wait till it's finished, and then hit power off and power back on. Okay, so just to show you here, boot that Xbox back up, and hit the white button for menu. Now you don't have to hit the white button. It will default to the first bank if you just let it go, and you can actually change the timing on that. If you go to Settings menu, after the main menu, go to Configuration, go to Settings menu, and you see where it says Default BIOS, that's where you set it to, okay? And Boot Timeout, that's how much time it gives after it says white button for menu. So it's set for 2 seconds now. You can change it to whatever you want, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and then it goes back to 0. So it's up to you. And then you go Save Settings. Oh, and also, sorry, Quick Start. Quick Start has to be on, by the way, at the top there. So, so what I wanted to show you, the way that we installed the other dashboard allows us to also still boot to original BIOS. If it boots to Bank 1 right now with the X2 BIOS, it's going to boot to EvoX dashboard. I can choose original BIOS, hit A, and it's going to boot to the original Microsoft dashboard. So just something kind of neat if you want to do it that way. So, but now we want XBMC, we don't want EvoX. So I'll show you how to do that right away here. So we're just power it off, power it back on, and let it time out, or select Bank 1 and get into the EvoX dashboard. Okay, so we're in the EvoX dashboard now. We have an IP address, which is really important for this next step. 192.168.1.101. You're going to have to set it up in order to access the hard drive, okay? You're going to need either a crossover cable. There's guides on the internet as to how to do this part. I can supply a guide too, or through a router. So it's either going to be crossover cable or router. Okay, you're going to need a computer for this part as well. A laptop, a desktop, it doesn't matter. So we'll get to the next part there on the computer. Okay, so I'm using a program called C Xbox Tool. This is the latest version, version 2.07. You can find it on the internet if you search. Now, so the Xbox is on in another room. It's connected through a router. So what I want to do in order to access the hard drive is go to Options. Well, go to FTP Explorer first, and then Options, Preferences, hit FTP, and then the IP address of the Xbox. Okay, put that in, port 21, username Xbox, password Xbox. Okay, okay. Then there's Connect down here. Hit Connect, and then we see the hard drive here and its partitions. Now we go to C. Now we have Evolution X, INI, evox-.xbe, a bunch of different files here. So including the original dashboard files. So what we want to transfer XBMC. So I got XBMC here. I'll include it in a link in the video description for you. The version I'm using. It's actually kind of a test version. It's not a stable version, but it works really well. So there we go. Okay. So we actually want to get rid of some of these here on the hard drive already. We want to get rid of evox.ini, rid of evox-.xbe, get rid of skin. We want to get rid of everything that isn't included on the original, what's on the drive originally. So this is a blank drive right here. And so I'm going to get rid of everything that isn't listed there. So trainers isn't there. What else? Skin isn't there. And that's it there. So we're going to delete those things. Okay. Now we're going to switch our dashboard. We're going to put evox. So highlight all the files and then just drag them over. Now I already switched the file that's called default.xbe. I renamed it to evox-.xbe. You're going to have to do that. If you don't, it's not going to work, because the Xbox is looking for that file in order to begin the dashboard. So you can do it beforehand, or you can do it after it's been transferred. You just right click on the file and onto the Xbox hard drive and you rename. So we're going to get this done. And we'll be back right when it finishes. Okay, so here we are. It's all finished here. Now, this is the file evox-.xbe. If this was still default .xbe, you would right click and go rename and name it evox-.xbe. Okay, so we don't need to worry about that. One thing you got to check though is go on scripts and check if there's the file modules or the folder modules. There isn't here. I don't know why, but it doesn't like to be transferred sometimes. So go into that folder on the XBMC files you got here on the left side. It's under scripts, modules, and drag that modules folder over. It's very important to have that folder. Okay, and make sure they're all transferred. Good. Okay, now you can power off your Xbox, power it back on, and you're going to have XBMC as your default dash. Then we can continue with the LCD install. Okay, so we got the controller port wire here. Now, there's two red wires. Either one is fine for grabbing the 5-volt supply of power. So first you want to cut it right in two. Okay, it's 26 gauge wire. And then strip a little bit on both ends. Then we actually want to strip a little bit off of one part of the wire. You don't want to cut it, you just want to strip it, okay? That's where we're going to connect the 5-volt supply of power. So this blue wire is 26 gauge too, if you're wondering. Okay, so we're going to put some heat shrink down so we can cover it up later. We're going to need 2 pieces of heat shrink. One piece on this side and one piece on the opposite side. Yeah. Okay, so I got my heat shrink here all done up. One part onto the one side of the red wire and the other part on the bottom. And I also pre-tinned, I put a little bit of solder on each end of the wires here. The one part that I spliced, and the 2 ends of the red wire, and the end for the 5-volt supply of power to the LCD. So now I want to connect the 5-volt power for the LCD to the red wire, the part that I spliced. Make sure it's soldered on good there, give it a good tug. Yep. Now I'm going to re-hook up the red wire here. So the red to red. I'm doing this over top the Xbox, so if you do it too, really make sure that you don't have any solder splashes come down on the motherboard. Should probably be doing it with the motherboard out, but I've done this before, so it's, yeah. So now the next part is to cover those spots with the heat shrink. So I'm going to grab the heat shrink down from where it was, cover up the spliced area, and also cover up the red 2 connections for the red wire. So I got everything back together, the hard drive and the optical drive. You can see that it clearly clears the wires there. So just be a little careful when you put in the hard drive, but it should fit fine. And then it's still flush in the front. So now we're just going to try the LCD. So we just got to wait for it to boot to the dashboard here. Oh, sorry, I see what the problem is. For this mod chip, in order for it, you need a controller plugged into one of the ports. It will not work otherwise. It will not fully turn on. So and there we go. has the plastic covering still on there. Take it off, it looks quite a bit better. So this one looks a little bit different than the one you're gonna get, because this is actually not how it's supposed to be. The person who supplies the adapter for me actually gave the wrong adapter, so it looks a little different. Freeman is cut off a little bit there, and there's an X in the top corner. Yours will look better the way it should be. So there you have it. Just put everything back together. If you see quite a bit of light coming out the sides here, what you can do is you could put a strip of electrical tape over top of the side of the LCD, and then put it back in. You won't see the electrical tape, but it'll take care of that extra light coming on the sides too. And I'll show you just once again after everything's put together. Okay, so this is what I meant about putting electrical tape on the side of the screen. Because right before I want to fix it, I want to make sure that there's no light coming through. Because it looks kind of strange when it's dark and you got the light coming through. So just put a piece of electrical tape down there and then hold it back and cut a good amount off. Doesn't really have to be even with the screen, because the part that is making the light is it's hard to do. I have a lot of room here, so make sure you cut enough so that it's going to be hidden, like when you put it back in, so that you're not going to see the tape. There we go. Just do that to the other side and then put it back in, and then we're going to fix it in place with some hot glue. So this is it, finally installed and fixed in place. All the hard work is paid off. It looks pretty good, I gotta say. Again, it's not totally perfect. If you want perfection, you're going to have to use the auto body filler and sand and then paint. What I don't like about that is that once you sand and paint the front faceplate, do it in the front, you're going to have to probably do all the rest of the Xbox. So yeah. So that's it there. You can change the contrast levels, like on the TV screen here. It shows. So on LCD, it's set to enable LCD HD 44780. Here, see better here. There. And then mod chip is Xenium. Backlight I got set at 15%. You can change that if you want. Contrast set at 5. And dim LCD on playback, no. So there you go.